The last menu we have is System at the bottom here, number 6. So we'll tab to number 6, System, and we'll go into the System menu by hitting the Set button. And we can see that we have 4 different adjustments we need to make on our machine. We may need to adjust the magazine and parts feeder, or we may want to adjust the swing and spin together so we have a straight line between the guns. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. When we go into magazine part, we hit Set to get into that menu, and you can see we have 3 steps that we have to accomplish when we need to adjust how the gun picks up our stone out of each of the parts feeder plate. Step number 1 is choosing whether we're adjusting the left side. Hitting Set changes it to right. Hitting Set again changes it to left. So we need to choose which side we're going to adjust. Step 2 is tabbing to the parts feeder plate. And right now you can see we have no value reading there, so our parts feeder plate needs to be activated. So we hit Set. That spins our parts feeder plate and displays a number here. This is the current position of our parts feeder plate where the gun's going to want to pick up the stone. The last step is to tab the gun, hit Set, and then we use the left arrow button to bring the gun over to the left hopper, in which we can actually test or see how our gun is going to come down to the stone. If we are working on the right hopper, we would tab to magazine, press Set on magazine, which will display the right hand side. Step 2 is activating the parts feeder plate, so we get a number displayed here. So we hit Set. Parts feeder plate, you'll see, will spin and it'll display a number here. And then we use the gun and we hit the right arrow button to bring it to the right hand side. The next part we want to talk about on the system is adjusting our swing and spin gun so there's a straight line between the two. We tab the swing and we hit Set, brings us into our swing command. You can see we have another value here that we need to see. To get the value, we hit Set. You will see the swing gun kind of moves into a position straight up and down, and there's a number displayed there. Hitting the Escape button, we can then go into the spin gun, hit Set to get into that menu, where we have another value displayed here. To get that value, we hit Set. That locks our spin gun into position. And then using the up and down arrow buttons, we could bring that bottom gun up to meet the top gun, where we can check to ensure that we have perfect alignment between both guns. The last option on our system menu is XY. Once we go into XY, we hit Set, brings us into our XY centering. You can see right here is our X coordinates and our Y coordinates. There's no numbers there, so we have to hit Set. Whenever you see no numbers listed there, you have to hit Set to activate it. And you will notice that our table will move to the center. After it does that, it shows us our X coordinates and our Y coordinates. You will see just underneath the XY coordinates the spin, an option for the spin gun. We use that to bring our spin gun down to the table to check our centering. So if I tab the spin, hit Set, and then I would use my right arrow button to spin the gun down, and then to bring the gun nozzle tip down, I hit the down arrow button, which will bring the gun tip down to the table. And we could check our coordinates. When we're finished with this, we would actually bring the gun back around and then hit the Escape button to go back to our main menu. Okay, when we want to adjust the gun to the stone, again, we would be in our system menu already. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to choose which side we're adjusting. If we're adjusting the left side, we need to hit Set on magazine to display the left side, which I'm already at. The second step is tabbing to the parts feeder and then pressing Set, which will spin our parts feeder plate. And it's important that we see that we have stones in the parts feeder plate. The last step would be to tab the gun, of course. We hit the set button, you see the gun locks into position, and we use our left arrow button to bring the gun over. Now for this step, I usually have my air system turned off in the back. I turn the little valve perpendicular from the air tubing, as we discussed earlier, because I could bring that gun down by hand and see exactly how she's lining up with the stone directly underneath of it. What we want to do is we want to adjust this parts feeder plate so that when the gun comes down to grab that stone, it's perfectly centered in the gun nozzle. If it's a little bit askew, what'll happen, it'll pick up askew, transfer to the bottom gun askew, and if our stones are real tight together, it'll actually hit the stone we previously laid down. So we want to make sure that our gun alignment is dead on. Now, as you can see, when I bring this gun down, I use a flashlight to help me see it, and some people even find it easier using a magnifying glass to do this. I bring the gun up and down. Now, before I do that, I tap the parts feeder plate just to make sure the stones line themselves at the right position, okay? Bring the gun down, and what I'm looking for, you see this little cutout here in the magazine? This is for you to have a better perspective around that gun nozzle to see all the way around how our gun is coming down on that stone. If we were left or right, like you could see here, if I move my parts feeder plate like this, you see now, right now, if my gun is coming down on the stone like that, we can see clearly that it's not going to pick up that stone correctly. So what we want to do, and I just dropped the stone out, so what I'll do is I'll spin my parts feeder plate to get another stone into position. Once it stops, tap the plate, bring the gun down, and I can see clearly I'm way off. So what I'll do is I'll tab to PF on my machine, and I'll use the arrow buttons to spin the parts feeder plate electronically until she lines up with the gun nozzle. So with the gun partly down so I can see how she's interacting, I'll hit my right arrow button here until she lines up. There we go, that looks pretty good. After I set the adjustment, I must hit the set button to set that coordinate into the computer. And what I'll do is I'll take a look, make sure that all the way around she's even on both sides. Okay? I don't have more than, now you can see after hitting the set button, just got to make a fine-tune adjustment on the other way. And I'll hit set. There we go. And that looks good. When that gun comes down on that stone, I can see it's perfectly lined up left and right. Now it's possible that our gun is coming forward of the stone this way, or it's aiming towards the rear of the stone, towards the back of the machine. If that's the case, on the left side of the hopper, right behind the hopper assembly, we do have a wing nut. Once loosening up these wing nuts, we could slide this whole assembly in and out as needed until it's lined up, and then tighten them up again. Once we have that, we may have to adjust our parts feeder bit just a little bit to make sure she's centered. When that's completed, I will lift my gun back up by hand, tab to my gun command on my menu screen, and hit the set to bring the gun out of the hopper.